I happened to witness the immediate aftermath of a car accident between this woman and a younger guy who seemed to be a new driver. The young guy had a stop sign and the woman was cussing at him, telling him he should be paying more attention and that he will kill someone if he drives like that. The poor dude was practically speechless and still reeling from the shock of the accident. Just as I was about to go on with my day, here comes a delivery guy on a scooter. He stops for half a sec to take stock of the situation and goes, "Hey, lady. Leave the poor kid alone, you were going the wrong way on a one-way street," while pointing at a sign that confirmed what he said. Suffice it to say, I pissed myself laughing at her as she went back to her car realizing she was at fault after all. My dad's funeral. My maternal grandfather got very emotional, and when he's emotional, he loses his English and lapses into Welsh. He's also a trained singer, so halfway through one of the hymns he starts bellowing it out in Welsh, which no one else in the church could speak. We live in Scotland. It was funny and awful at the same time. I was doing storefront fundraising at a Walmart for the non-profit I'm a part of. I pitched a guy on the way in, and his reply was, "I'll donate to someone else, as soon as someone donates me a kidney." I expressed my sympathies and moved on. The guy I was fundraising with pitched the man again, as he walked out of the store. The man must have said something derogatory, and my partner looked at me, shrugged, and made a funny face. I laughed and the guy wheeled around and started screaming and cursing at me for laughing at a man who needs a kidney transplant. He ended up calling the store and saying I was mocking his plight, and we were asked to leave for the day. Clearly tired dad and his, I'm assuming, 5-year-old daughter in a supermarket, following behind him pointing out things that she thinks they need in an obnoxious voice. "Girl, daddy, do you know what we need?" "Dad, silence girl, daddy. Do you know what we need?" "Girl, daddy. Do you know what we need?" "Dad, a muzzle." Had to duck into the next aisle so fast and burst out laughing. The people in that aisle had no idea what I just heard, and looked at me like I was laughing at voices in my head. A teenager was harassing a middle-aged woman in a wheelchair. The teenager tried to kick her in the face. She caught his foot so he fell on his face. She held his foot up and repeatedly kicked his nuts with her giant special boot. My neighbor, 60F, was about to open her gate, but then she saw us, and she quickly turned around to say hello. Well, she perfectly face-planked to the ground while doing so, got up and acted like nothing had happened and continued talking. I tried to ask her if she was okay, but couldn't stop laughing. I must have looked like an asshole. It was the most perfect plank I've ever seen. Edit, formatting. I used to be a wedding planner. One wedding was set on a coastal beach. Really great day. I had been working on this for months. Now, the couple decided that the ring bearer would be their Labrador, and he would have the rings on a ribbon around his neck. Fair enough. So a bridesmaid would let him off the lead at the beginning of the aisle, and he would trot down to the happy couple. We did test runs and he was really good, so he was the least of my problems. Or so I thought. I'm right at the back with my schedule. Ceremony starts, but the dog had different ideas. He stormed down the aisle, almost knocking the bride over, past the couple, down the beach, and into the sea with the rings. Half of the groomsmen running after him, ending up drenched in the sea. I literally had tears running down my face with laughter. There was fuck all I could do. Had to balance against a wall with my heels embedded in the sand. I joked about my friend and said he looked like he was having a seizure before my dumbass realized he actually was having a seizure. I was out with a cousin that I had not seen in quite a while since she lives in another country. We were at a cafeteria/bar type thing. Since she was staying a few days only, she asked me if it was okay if some friends of hers that she hadn't seen in years came along. Told her sure, and 10 minutes later they come sit with us. One of them, they were 3, starts telling us what's up with his life and casually drops, "Oh, my father also died this summer," as if he had bought a new phone or STH, and I almost spit my drink. I really tried not laughing, but he didn't help. I left out a tiny giggle, and he continued telling how his father died casually. I had to look at my phone to not lose it. During my graduation ceremony, I was in the front row. We all got up to sing the school's anthem. The song was also gestured in sign language. For some reason, I found the person's gestures really silly, and I was barely containing myself from erupting into laughter. Was in a restaurant, and there was this kid a few seats ahead of me just being loud and annoying, so when he got out of his seat to do God knows what, he tripped and fell on his untied shoe and face planted into the hardwood floor. I laughed out loud so hard, and I got a lot of nasty stares, but it was worth it. I was very close to my great-grandma growing up. I was at her house often as she babysat me when I was younger. I was 12 when she died. It was the first death of someone I knew and loved. I was devastated. Fast forward to the funeral. It was only my second funeral, and this one I didn't know how to act, because I was grieving. My younger sister and I were tagging around with our uncle, who was 14, and close enough to our age that we were very close growing up. He was trying to keep up distracted and cheered up. So we were a bit squirrely, and our moms kept telling us to calm down. There was a family member at the funeral going around taking pictures of family. He asked my sister and I to get a picture in front of the casket. I was weirded out, but okay. He tells us to look at her with our palms together like we're praying. I was struck by the absurdity of this and thought, oh, I should pretend I'm crying. So I quick duck my face into my head and pretend to sob. I realized I was pretending to cry in front of my dead great-grandmother for a picture, and for some reason, I thought this was just hilarious, and started giggling uncontrollably. My sister quickly starts giggling. We both succumb to what I'm sure was grief and uncomfortableness combined, and we are literally on the floor laughing in front of our great-grandmother's casket. I have a bad habit of peeing if I laugh too hard, and sure enough, I'm trying hard not to wet my tights and laughing and crying. I see my mom and grandma come marching up to us and everyone staring daggers at us. We got a good talking to about respect and are told to stay in the side room for family until we can compose ourselves. I was so ashamed, and it was one of my most embarrassing memories for decades. I've finally come to terms with it, and can appreciate that my great-grandma would have probably loved that we were laughing at her funeral. TLDR, I wet my pants laughing in front of my dead great-grandmother's casket. Edit, a word. I was working at a McDonald's cleaning in front. Next door I saw a guy walking, and some guy comes on his bike behind and lays him out with one punch. The ending of A Boy in the Striped Pajamas. They were showing it at the blood donation place I went to, and at the end of the movie NGT. The son of the German running the concentration camp wanders into the camp, and gets sent to the gas chamber. And LT, the irony of it made me giggle, and the dirty looks from all of the old ladies who had also just given blood, and watched the movie made me lose it. I was crying from laughter, and that's the story of why I am no longer allowed to give blood. My wife and I walked around the grocery store one day, and when we turned around, an aisle 7 girl all of a sudden was in front of us. We managed to not laugh or stare, barely. Then a black guy that was approximate 15 seconds behind us noticed, and loudly yelled, "Damn, you're tall as hell, girl," in a voice only a 40-plus black man can make. We bursted and quickly got into another aisle. Poor girl. She seemed shy and bothered by being in public. Just because of people like me and my wife. Frick us. At my grandma's funeral, when it came time for interment, all of us who'd gone to the cemetery were asked to stay some 50 yards away, as they were sodding the whole new area of the cemetery we were in. However, my grandpa wanted to sprinkle some dirt on her casket, so they permitted him to do so, with my mom, aunt, and uncle alongside. A few moments later, we heard a really loud thud. Evidently, because of the nature of the dirt there, instead of being able to find a small handful of loose dirt, he picked up a little clod or two and tossed that into the grave. Hearing the thud in the distance, my wife and sisters, and I couldn't resist busting out laughing. Luckily Grandpa was too far away to hear it. Lady at church started speaking in tongues. I just couldn't help myself. I was around 11 to 13 years old at the time. The pastor had the nerve to pull me to the side and lecture me. I hated church. The worst thing a parent can do is force their child to go to church if they don't want to. About 2.5 years ago, I was walking down the main street in my city, and let me tell you, it was about half past boiling degrees. Anyway, as I'm just walking along, and struggling might I add, this guy who would have to have been around 6'9" lumbers past me in an old Victorian top hat. I couldn't stop myself from letting out a light chuckle. I held back as I didn't want to be rude. To my surprise, he must have heard me, and he turns to me, and gives me a big cheeky wink before tipping his hat and running away. I still think about that big fella from time to time. Someone was repairing the sidewalk outside of a McDonald's with sealant, and I legitimately went up to him and shouted, "Nice cock." I am the only one who laughed. I was talking to my colleague, and I causally asked him how his weekend went. I was expecting him to say the usual boring stuff like walked the dog, etc. Instead, out of nowhere, he says it was fine. Went to my mate's funeral. At that moment I burst out laughing in his face uncontrollably. I don't understand why it made me laugh so much, but it was the last thing I expected him to say. I'm a terrible person.